The rain was a constant companion in Willow Creek, Oregon, a soft, insistent whisper against my apartment window that had become the soundtrack to my life. At 32, I had carved out a comfortable existence, building a career in business-to-business software sales. My days were a whirlwind of client calls, presentations, and the meticulous art of relationship building. I prided myself on my ability to connect with people, to understand their needs, and to offer solutions that truly benefited them. My work was more than just a paycheck. It was about trust, integrity, and the satisfaction of seeing a deal through to a successful, mutually beneficial conclusion. My small, two-bedroom apartment, usually a minimalist haven, had slowly transformed into a testament to impending parenthood. A pastel-painted nursery, filled with meticulously organized onesies and a mobile featuring sleepy sheep, was ready. My heart swelled with anticipation for the little life that would soon fill these quiet rooms with gurgles and cries. I had always envisioned a life that combined my professional drive with the deep joys of family, and now it was finally within reach. However, life, as it often does, threw a curveball. My daughter, Lily, decided to make an early entrance into the world. Her arrival was premature, forcing us into the unfamiliar and terrifying world of the neonatal intensive care unit, the NICU. Those first few weeks were a blur of beeping machines, hushed conversations with nurses, and the constant, gnawing fear that twisted my stomach into knots. I spent hours beside her incubator, watching her tiny chest rise and fall with each labored breath, my hand barely able to encompass her minuscule fingers. The air in the NICU was thick with the scent of antiseptic and the quiet hum of medical equipment, a stark contrast to the fresh, damp air of Willow Creek. Every day was a fragile balance between hope and anxiety, punctuated by the doctor's measured words and the nurse's gentle encouragement. My carefully planned maternity leave suddenly became an emotional roller coaster of exhaustion and unwavering devotion. The financial strain was also beginning to show, as unexpected medical bills piled up, adding another layer of worry to my already heavy heart. In the midst of this overwhelming period, I found myself still navigating the demands of my sales job, albeit from a distance. One afternoon, while I was on a video call from the hospital's quiet waiting area, the subject of a premium stroller came up. My client, Marcus Thorne, was someone I had worked with for nearly a year. He was a senior account manager at a large tech firm, and we had successfully closed several complex deals together. Marcus had a smooth, confident demeanor, always impeccably dressed, with a disarming smile and a knack for making you feel like you were the only person in the room. He spoke with a polished cadence that made everything he said sound authoritative and reassuring. I had always found him to be professional, reliable, and someone who delivered on his promises, which made the idea of doing business with him on a personal level seem completely natural. Our professional relationship had built a foundation of trust, making him seem like a genuinely good person beyond the transactional nature of our work. "Eleanor," Marcus began, his voice warm and empathetic, "how is little Lily doing? I've been thinking about you and your family a lot." He paused, allowing the gravity of the situation to settle. "You know, my wife Brenda, she works at Nordstrom, specifically in their luxury baby department. I remember you mentioning wanting one of those UPP Vista strollers? They're pretty expensive, I know, especially right now with everything you're going through." My ears perked up. The UPP Vista was indeed the dream stroller. I had researched it extensively, drawn to its sturdy frame, adaptable design, and the smooth ride it offered, features that felt essential for navigating the often uneven sidewalks of Willow Creek and ensuring Lily's comfort as she grew. But at over $1,000, it felt like an extravagance I couldn't justify, especially with the mounting NICU bills. "Yes, I've been eyeing that one," I admitted, trying to keep the hope out of my voice. It's a lot right now." Marcus leaned into the camera, a conspiratorial glint in his eyes. "Well, Brenda gets a fantastic employee discount, and she's got some connections. She might be able to get you one brand new, for almost half off. We're talking $550, maybe $600 max. It would be a direct order, shipped to you, no fuss. Just a little favor for a valued client, you know?" He smiled, his expression one of genuine generosity. "Think of it as a small gesture of support from us during this tough time." A wave of relief washed over me. $550? That was an incredible deal, almost too good to be true. My logical mind, honed by years in sales, flagged the warning signs. Direct cash exchange. No formal receipt, a discount that steep. But my emotional mind, exhausted and vulnerable from weeks of worry over Lily, quickly rationalized it away. This wasn't some shady character I'd met online. This was Marcus Thorne, a reputable professional, someone I had done significant business with. He knew about Lily's delicate health, the financial strain I was under. Who would exploit that? The thought felt almost sacrilegious. Besides, the idea of getting such a vital piece of baby gear, a symbol of normalcy in preparation for Lily's homecoming, at such a significant saving, felt like a lifeline. It was a tangible way to provide for my daughter without further burdening our already stretched finances. That would be amazing, Marcus, I said, my voice barely a whisper. Are you sure it's not too much trouble? Not at all, he assured me, his smile widening. Happy to help. Just transfer the money to my personal account, and Brenda will handle the order. Should be about 2 weeks for delivery tops. That afternoon, I transferred $550 to Marcus's personal account. I didn't think twice. My focus was squarely on Lily. Handing over that money felt like an investment in her future, a small act of preparation that would make her transition home smoother. I imagined pushing her in that sleek, comfortable stroller, navigating the neighborhood, enjoying the simple pleasure of a walk in the Oregon rain. Marcus had even sent me a text confirming receipt of the funds. Got it. Brenda's on it. Stroller should be with you soon. Keep us updated on Lily. It felt concrete, a done deal. I felt a surge of gratitude, convinced that I had found not just a helpful client, but a genuine ally. The next few weeks passed in a blur of small victories and minor setbacks in the NICU. Lily was a fighter. Her breathing grew stronger. Her tiny weight slowly but surely increased. Every morning, I woke with a renewed sense of purpose, driving to the hospital, charting her progress, holding her tiny hand. The stroller was a background thought, a comforting promise in the back of my mind. I exchanged a few texts with Marcus. His replies were brief but reassuring. Shipping delays, he'd say. Brenda's checking on it. Supply chain issues, you know how it is. I didn't press. My daughter's health was my sole priority. The world outside the hospital walls felt distant, almost irrelevant. Then, one glorious morning, the doctors gave us the news. Lily was well enough to come home. My heart soared with a joy so profound it brought tears to my eyes. We packed her tiny belongings, said our emotional goodbyes to the nurses who had become like family, and carefully buckled her into her car seat. As we drove away from the hospital, the sun, a rare sight in Willow Creek, peeked through the clouds, casting a golden glow over the wet streets. Lily was finally coming home. But as I stepped into my apartment, the quiet triumph was tinged with a quiet unease. The nursery was complete, beautiful even, but there was no stroller. The empty corner where it should have been felt like a gaping hole. The immediate practicality of needing one hit me hard. How would I take Lily to her follow-up appointments? How would I manage trips to the grocery store? The reality of having a newborn without proper transportation suddenly loomed large. I pulled out my phone, my fingers trembling slightly as I dialed Marcus's number. It rang once, twice, then went straight to voicemail. I tried again. Same result. I sent a text. No reply. My stomach began to churn. This wasn't like him. His company email, usually a reliable way to reach him, bounced back with an automated message. Marcus Thorne is no longer with company name. For assistance, please contact. My blood ran cold. He had quit his job. Without a trace. A cold dread seeped into my bones, replacing the joy of Lily's homecoming with a bitter, acrid taste. I called a colleague, a mutual acquaintance who had also worked with Marcus. Hey, have you heard from Marcus Thorne? I asked, trying to keep my voice casual. Marcus? Oh, no, Eleanor. He just disappeared a couple of weeks ago. Gave his 2 weeks' notice and then never came back after the first day. Said he had a family emergency out of state. We haven't heard from him since. The phone slipped from my grasp, clattering against the kitchen counter. My knees felt weak. He had vanished. And my $550 had vanished with him. The realization hit me like a physical blow. I hadn't just been scammed. I had been violated, exploited at my most vulnerable. He knew about Lily, about the NICU, about the financial strain. He had used my desperation and my trust as a weapon. Hot tears streamed down my face, not just for the money, but for the profound betrayal. How could I have been so foolish? I, a sales professional who prided herself on being discerning, had fallen for such a blatant, cruel trick. The anger was a slow burn, but beneath it, a deeper, more painful emotion simmered. The searing shame of being taken advantage of letting my guard down when I should have been most vigilant. The shame was a constant reminder of my naivete. I had to buy another stroller, of course a more basic model, but still full price. It was a grudging purchase, adding another $500 to my already strained budget. Every time I looked at it, the serviceable but decidedly less than dream stroller, I felt the phantom sting of Marcus's deception. It wasn't just the money. It was the principle. It was the feeling that someone had seen my struggle, seen my love for my child, and deliberately chosen to prey on it. Sitting in my living room, Lily sleeping peacefully in her bassinet beside me, the rain still falling steadily outside, I felt a quiet, simmering resentment. Moving on was the logical, healthy thing to do, I knew. But the sting of injustice lingered. The idea that Marcus Thorne could simply vanish, $550 richer, leaving me with nothing but the bitter taste of betrayal and the added financial burden, felt wrong. It felt profoundly, undeniably wrong. I knew I couldn't track him down, couldn't break the law, but the thought, the deep, insistent urge, began to form. I wanted him to know, in some small way, that his actions had consequences. I needed him to feel a fraction of the inconvenience and disruption he had so carelessly inflicted upon me during the most vulnerable time of my life. That's when the idea of posting online anonymously to ask for ideas first came to mind. It was a desperate, quiet act of seeking a small measure of equilibrium in a world that suddenly felt profoundly out of balance. The cold, damp air of Willow Creek usually brought me comfort, a familiar embrace of home. But in the weeks after I lost the money for that stroller, it felt like a heavy blanket suffocating me. My daughter Lily was finally home, healthy and thriving, and every tiny gurgle and sleepy sigh was a miracle I cherished. Yet, the sting of that scam still lingered, a dull ache beneath the joy of new motherhood. I'd try to shake it off, to focus on Lily, but then I'd think about the man who took advantage of my vulnerability, and the anger would simmer. I started small, just like the Reddit thread suggested. I signed him up for every mailing list I could find, obscure newsletters about rare coin collecting, daily alerts for artisanal cheese deliveries, endless spam emails about vacation rentals in places he'd never go. I spent an entire afternoon finding every single online form that didn't require email confirmation and flooded his inbox and mailbox with nonsense. My fingers flew across the keyboard, a furious, desperate energy guiding me. It felt good, for a moment, a fleeting sense of reclaiming a tiny sliver of control. Each click was a small act of defiance. Another catalog for exotic bird feed, Mr. Davies. I'd mutter to myself, a bitter smile on my face as I hit submit again. Hope you enjoy the reading. But the satisfaction never lasted. It was like scratching an itch that was too deep, a superficial relief that didn't address the root of the problem. A week later, I found myself staring at the stack of unsolicited mail I'd signed him up for, a faint sense of unease creeping in. Was this really it? Was this tiny, almost invisible annoyance the extent of my vengeance? It felt hollow, petty. It didn't feel like justice. It certainly didn't feel like I was doing anything to prevent him from preying on other new parents. One afternoon, while Lily was napping, I found myself scrolling through local parenting groups online. I wasn't looking for him, not directly, but I was still drawn to stories of scams, trying to understand how I'd been so easily manipulated. That's when I saw it. A post, just a few days old, from a woman in Portland. Her story hit me like a physical blow. Beware of a man claiming his wife works at Nordstrom, the post began. He promises luxury baby items at a discount, asks for cash, and then disappears. Lost $1,000 for a crib. My baby was premature, and I was so desperate to save money. My heart hammered against my ribs. It was him. The The same exact story, the same MO. My blood ran cold, then boiled with a fresh, righteous fury that was far more potent than the initial sting of being ripped off. This wasn't just about my stroller. This wasn't just about my personal mistake. This was a pattern. He wasn't just scamming me. He was preying on vulnerable parents, on people in one of the most susceptible moments of their lives. He had targeted me when Lily was in the NICU, when I was emotionally raw and desperate to prepare for her arrival. He did the same to this woman, and how many others? My hands trembled as I messaged the woman, Sarah. I saw your post about the Nordstrom scam. I typed, my fingers clumsy with emotion. I think I know him. He did the same thing to me, just a few weeks ago, for a stroller. My daughter was in the NICU too. Sarah responded almost immediately. Her shock and relief were palpable even through text. I thought I was the only one, she wrote back. He was so convincing. I feel so stupid. Don't, I replied, a wave of empathy washing over me. He's a professional. He knows how to find vulnerable people. We talked for hours that night, exchanging details. Names, dates, conversations. The patterns were undeniable. He'd gone by different first names but the same last name. He worked in different roles, but always in a sales capacity where he could gain trust. He always mentioned his wife at Nordstrom. And always, he targeted new parents, often with a sick or premature baby, knowing their desperation and lack of sleep would make them less cautious. My rage intensified, but it was no longer a consuming fire. It was a clear, cold resolve. Signing him up for junk mail felt pathetic now, an insult to the pain he had inflicted on so many. This wasn't about minor inconvenience anymore. This was about stopping a predator. This was about protecting other families. What do we do? Sarah asked, her voice cracking over the phone a few days later. We'd found 2 more victims in online forums, one in Salem and another in Eugene. The scale of his deception was becoming sickeningly clear. He had moved around Oregon, leaving a trail of broken trust and financial loss. We expose him, I said, the words feeling heavy and true as they left my lips. We don't just get him back, we make sure he can't do this to anyone else. And we help others heal. The idea felt monumental, terrifying, but also exhilarating. This was the turning point. I realized then that my initial desire for revenge was just a smokescreen for a deeper need, a need for justice, for restitution not just for my loss, but for the collective trust he had violated. My daughter's innocent eyes, her tiny hand gripping my finger, were my motivation. I couldn't stand by while someone exploited the very essence of parenthood. I shifted from seeking individual retribution to pursuing systemic change. I wanted to prevent anyone else from feeling the unique agony of being financially exploited during such a vulnerable and emotionally charged period of their lives. My background in sales, once a source of personal pride and professional success, became my unexpected weapon. I understood how to build trust, how to gather information, how to present a compelling case. This was just a different kind of pitch, a different kind of close. First, we create a secure, private online space, I told Sarah. Somewhere we can all connect, share stories, and build a cohesive narrative. We need a central hub for evidence. I spent countless nights after Lily was asleep, fueled by lukewarm coffee and a burning sense of purpose. I researched online community platforms, secure messaging apps, and legal aid resources. I crafted an invitation message that was empathetic yet firm, clear in its purpose. If you've been scammed by a man offering Nordstrom discounts for baby items, please join our group. We are building a case to stop him and support each other. I distributed it through the various parenting forums, careful to avoid any defamatory language, focusing only on the factual patterns of the scam. Slowly, tentatively, more people joined. Jessica from Bend, who lost money on a car seat. Mark from Medford, who was scammed out of a bassinet. Their stories mirrored ours, down to the specific phrases the man used, the excuses he gave, and the way he vanished. We started calling ourselves the Willow Creek Collective, a small nod to my town, a place that, despite its peaceful veneer, had sparked a quiet revolution. Our first virtual meeting was a mixture of raw emotion and cautious hope. There were tears, shared frustrations, and the overwhelming relief of finally being understood. I felt so ashamed, Jessica admitted, her voice trembling. Like I was stupid for falling for it. You're not stupid, I said, my voice steady, projecting the strength I felt growing inside me. You were targeted. And now we're going to turn this around. We started meticulous documentation. I created a shared, encrypted spreadsheet. Each victim contributed their communication records, bank statements, and any other relevant evidence. We cross-referenced details, piecing together a comprehensive timeline of his activities. We discovered his real name, his previous addresses, and even a history of similar minor financial offenses in other states. He wasn't just a one-off opportunist. He was a serial con artist. Our initial attempt to contact local law enforcement was met with polite but firm resistance. It's a civil matter, one officer explained. Without a clear pattern of criminal intent that rises to a felony, it's hard to pursue each individual case. But it is a pattern, I argued, my voice tight with frustration. He's done this to dozens of us. We have evidence, timelines, everything. I understand your frustration, Ms. Vance, he said, his tone dismissive. But we have limited resources. It was a setback, but not a deterrent. It only solidified my resolve. If the system wouldn't act on individual complaints, we would make a collective noise too loud to ignore. I reached out to consumer protection agencies, local news outlets, and even a few legal aid organizations specializing in consumer fraud. Many were sympathetic but hesitant. Scams like this were common, hard to prosecute, and often slipped through the cracks. But we kept pushing. We're not just victims, I told a local reporter named Sarah Chen, who finally agreed to listen. We're a community, and we're organized. We have all the evidence you need to tell a story that will warn other parents and hopefully pressure authorities to act. Sarah Chen, a young, ambitious journalist, saw the human interest angle and the potential for a larger expose. She met with several members of the collective, interviewing them, hearing their stories firsthand. Her article, titled Preying on Parenthood, How a Nordstrom Stroller Scam Targeted Vulnerable Families, was published a few weeks later in the Willow Creek Chronicle and quickly picked up by other regional papers. It featured our stories, the details of the scam, and the unity of the Willow Creek Collective. It didn't just highlight the scam, it highlighted the resilience of the victims. The article was a turning point. The public outrage was immediate and widespread. Other victims, emboldened by our story, started coming forward, expanding the collective even further. Suddenly, law enforcement wasn't so dismissive. A multi-agency task force, including the Oregon Department of Justice, reached out to me. The sheer volume of complaints, coupled with the detailed evidence we had meticulously compiled, finally gave them the leverage they needed. I spent countless hours working with investigators, providing testimony, coordinating with the other victims to ensure their statements were clear and consistent. It was emotionally draining, dredging up painful memories, but every moment felt purposeful. I was no longer the naive new mother who had been easily duped. I was an advocate, a leader, a force for change. The scammer, whose real name turned out to be Arthur Peterson, was eventually located and arrested on multiple counts of fraud. The legal proceedings were slow, as they always are, but the momentum was undeniable. He faced charges not just for the money he took, but for the systematic pattern of deception. The stroller, the crib, the car seat, they were all just fragments of a much larger, darker mosaic. But Arthur Peterson's arrest, while a significant victory, was not the end of my journey. The Willow Creek Collective had become more than just a support group. It was a powerful network. We continued to meet, sharing resources, discussing ways to empower consumers, especially new parents. We collaborated with local nonprofits to create educational materials about common scams targeting families. We even partnered with a state representative to draft legislation aimed at increasing penalties for targeting vulnerable populations in financial fraud schemes. I never got my money back for the stroller, and that became irrelevant. Lily was thriving, a bright, curious toddler whose laughter filled our home with joy. She was the reason I fought, and she was the reason I looked forward, not backward. The experience had taught me a profound lesson, that true power lay not in retribution, but in transformation. I had transformed my pain into purpose, my shame into strength. I had helped build a bridge for others to cross, from victimhood to empowerment. I found myself speaking at community events, sharing my story, not as a lament, but as a call to action. My voice, once trembling with anger, now resonated with confidence and conviction. I was Eleanor Vance, a mother, yes, but also an advocate, a community builder, a woman who had taken a devastating personal blow and used it to forge systemic change. The scammer had taken money, but he had inadvertently given me a mission, a voice, and a deeper understanding of my own resilience. I was no longer defined by what had been taken from me, but by what I had built in its place.